I notice that a timer has been subtly left behind on the podium here, so I'll try to abide by that. I gather I'll have no choice. I understand, too, that my remit is to add to the practical appreciation of the kinds of challenges that we all face. And as part of that, I would cite, as some of my experience, two things. One item that takes us beyond mere questions of universal jurisdiction to those perhaps of a certain interplanetary nature. Let me stick with the terrestrial side first. I, here on Earth, was one of those many people who was sued by the radical Wahhabist, Islamist organization, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, known by, of course, the acronym pronounced CARE, for rather peculiar reasons that escape me. And in Canada, I was sued by their Canadian chapter, the Canadian Council on American Islamic Relations. So this was in libel, and as many of you may appreciate, between roughly the years 2002 and 2006, there was a mass assault made by the CARE enterprise upon media and commentators across North America on the First Amendment and the Canadian Section 2 of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, vaguely analogous to the First Amendment. This has had great chilling effects on a good deal of what goes on, and unfortunately the extent of those chilling effects is not fully appreciated by a great many very sophisticated individuals who attempt to follow the media. And we'll get into some detail on that. As regards my more interplanetary exposure to the damage and disruption that lawfare can inflict, I came across in the late 90s a peculiar legal situation involving the Superior Court of Ontario. And there we saw a number of corporations, of individuals, professionals, government agencies, and others dragged into court, and in one scene almost doing acrobatics in the courtroom in attempts to have dismissed the proceedings. What it all seemed to amount to was an individual who, and I have a little excerpt from the judge's remarks, as I understand them, the nature of this individual's complaints against numerous defendants is that they have conspired with the American government, ultimately the CIA and others were dragged into this, in its attempts to eliminate him and have otherwise taken various steps to interfere with his ability to establish himself and live freely as a Martian. It was instructive, of course, to see, and I take no position between radical Muslims and moderate Martians, but it was instructive to have seen in this context the tremendous dislocation of the legal fraternity and other responsible interests, including courts, who were exposed to this situation, which ultimately was dismissed, as one might have hoped. However, now we live with, again, a more sinister version of this kind of thing, and I've alluded to what the CARE organization has given us. Let's step back then as we look at the practicalities and the implications to just consider the threat situation that we face today. The situation is grave, and I think a good deal graver than many would imagine. On the domestic front, we've seen instances of terrorism, of course, outright.